We have reached the last day of the college football season. The college football playoff national championship is tonight. The number 8 Ohio State Buckeyes versus the number 7 Notre Dame Fighting Irish in Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's going to be a good one. Welcome back, everyone. Mazarski Memos, college football playoff national championship preview. I'm going to keep this one pretty short because I put one out earlier in the week. Got to do some divisional round stuff too. Not a lot of editing here too. I'm just going to share my screen and just go through it. But we have made it. It is time. It is the college football national championship. And here we go. It is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish versus the Ohio State Buckeyes. Notre Dame to get here had to beat Indiana at home. They won 27-17. Then in the All-State Sugar Bowl against Georgia, beat them 23-10, and then beat Penn State 27-24 in the Capital One Orange Bowl. On the other hand, the Ohio State Buckeyes, after losing to Michigan in their season finale and having a lot of doubters, they ended up just steamrolling their way through the college football playoff, beat Tennessee 42-17, Oregon 41-21, and Texas 28-14. You could have made an argument that these were the best two teams in college football all year, especially Ohio State, who has one of the most valuable rosters in college football, over $20 million, right? After losing to Michigan last year, missing the playoff, Ohio State did not have the season they wanted last year, and everybody knows that. They addressed it not only through the transfer portal, where they brought in transfer quarterback Will Howard from Kansas State, running back Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State, or from Ole Miss, excuse me, Caleb Downs from Alabama. A bunch of guys return for moments like this. JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer, Denzel Burke, Trevion Henderson, Emeka Ibuka. This is why you come to Ohio State for games like this. They were not happy about what happened last year. And it looked like it was going to be the same after suffering that really bad loss to Michigan, but Ohio State has steamrolled their way through the college football playoff. These are two very different storylines, right? Ohio State's been a favorite all year. Even after losing to Michigan, they had some doubters and stuff, and they fell all the way down to the number 8 seed in the college football playoff, but they were one of the best teams. Everybody knew that they could win it all. Notre Dame, on the other hand, beat Texas A&M in their season opener at Kyle Field, but the week after lost to NIU, probably one of the worst losses a top 25 team has suffered. A lot of people wrote them off. And what did the Fighting Irish do? They ran the table, and they didn't only run the table, they kicked the crap out of anyone they played. Here, I'm going to show you the Fighting Irish schedule right now. They only had one game from September 14th to January 20th when I'm recording this video within one score, and it was against Louisville, who was number 15 at the time. Louisville was ranked for a lot of the year. Notre Dame, after suffering that really bad loss in Northern Illinois, where people were even calling for head coach Marcus Freeman's job, they kicked the crap out of everyone. And it wasn't only bad opponents. Navy ranked 51-14. Army ranked 49-14. USC, hard place to play, 49-35. Indiana was a 10-point game, but Indiana didn't score until the third quarter. That was the best offense in the country in the regular season. Georgia, without their quarterback, but that defense is still a top unit. Notre Dame forces turnovers, and they rely on their defense. Penn State, once again, 24-24, rely on that top defense, and we'll get to that in a second. So there's a few things in this game. I do think this game is about comparables, and I say that a lot in my college football previews, but Notre Dame and Ohio State, their rosters are very, very similar. So, you got to start with the transfer quarterbacks, Riley Leonard for Notre Dame, Will Howard for Ohio State. Leonard, transfer from Duke, first year at Notre Dame. He's been incredible. 2,600 yards in the air, 860 on the ground, 16 touchdowns. He's as much of a dual threat quarterback as you're going to get in college football. And that's this Notre Dame rushing attack that I'll get to in a second. But if you want another quarterback that has both an arm and legs, well, every quarterback has arm and legs, but I just mean being able to throw the ball and run it. That's Will Howard, because he is that dual threat quarterback, and he's really come into it in the college football playoff. At least 2 touchdowns in every game. And against Texas in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl, he had a huge QB draw play. He did trip on it. He was going to score, but he used his legs in that. And the Ohio State did not have to use him a lot on the ground because they have that rushing attack. But Howard has that in his arsenal. He's a transfer from Kansas State. Both of them could sling it. Both of them could run it. And that's the first part of comparables. You keep going. These are two of the best 1-2 punches in the country. Notre Dame, Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. Jeremiah Love, 1,100 yards on the year, 18 touchdowns or 17, something like that. Jadarian Price, 800 yards of his own, I think 6 or 7 touchdowns. And when Love's been hurt for the college football playoff, Love's been playing, but he's been dealing with a knee injury. Didn't matter in the Orange Bowl, though. Price has been there. Ohio State, another 1-2 punch. Quinshon Judkins, 2,000-yard seasons at Ole Miss, comes over. to Ohio State to split carries with Trevion Henderson. Trevion Henderson's had a big play in every single game in the college football playoff. 2 touchdowns against Tennessee, massive touchdown run against Oregon to make it 31-0. Screen pass against Texas, went 75 yards, looked like Texas had the momentum. Ohio State said no. Judkins and Henderson are one of the only duos in the country to have over 1,000 scrimmage yards each. And Ryan Day and Chip Kelly, offensive coordinator of Ohio State, likes to ride the hot hand when it comes to that. So, yeah, we are going to see really good running backs tonight. And these rushing attacks get even better because Will Howard and Riley Leonard are able to use their legs. Specifically for the Fighting Irish, Leonard has over 860 yards on the ground and 16 touchdowns this season. You saw it against Penn State where he was able to carry the ball and stuff. They like using Riley Leonard's legs, especially when Jeremiah Love can't get going, which isn't a lot of the time, but it just adds another full element to the fold. And you saw that for the Buckeyes too against Texas, right? Will Howard, not a lot of carries in the game. Quinshon Judkins, 2 touchdowns already. Or not at this play, actually. It was 14-14, but it was a big play. Use Will Howard's legs. These two teams have really good rushing attacks. And you're going to see that tonight. These are two of the best offensive lines in the country, too. Quarterbacks don't get sacked a lot. I think Will Howard's like 12 times, Riley Leonard's like 18. These teams like to run it in between the tackles, but also like their toss options. And you're going to see it today. But if you're going to talk about these teams, you have to talk about defense because defense wins championships. I said this earlier on my episode. These are the two best defenses in the country, and I'm not saying that in a subjective term. These are the two best defenses in the country if I'm going to pull up the college football stats right now. Points per game, Ohio State first, 12.2, Notre Dame 14.3. Yards per game, Ohio State first at 251.1, Notre Dame in the top 10, 298.3. If we're going to go into passing defenses, they're the two best passing defenses in the country in yards per game. Both allow under 165. Then you keep going. Both these teams know how to force turnovers. Ohio State only has 10 interceptions, but they force turnovers in their pass rush and stuff. Notre Dame, fifth in the country with 19. These defenses are ridiculous. If Notre Dame has a weakness, it is their rush defense. They're not really up there. Ohio State does not have a weakness on their defense. I will say that right now because their corners have been playing better in Denzel Burke, Davison Igbinosa, and Jordan Hancock. I said this in their preview against Oregon. Ohio State's defense is really, really good up the middle. At every level, you have studs first-round draft picks. Jack Sawyer, Tyreek Williams, JT Tuimoloau in the front. Cody Simon, linebacker. Caleb Downs, Lathan Ransom, Sonny Styles, safeties. There's one weakness. It was their safeties. Not safeties, cornerbacks. Denzel Burke, Davison Igbinosa, and Jordan Hancock. Oregon was able to exploit them the first time out. There were a bunch of PI penalties called against that Michigan game, too. Their corners have been great. And metrically, it's very hard to find a weakness on this Ohio State defense. But if there is one, it's their corners. But I'm going to say it right now, they don't really have a weakness. And they match up well against Notre Dame, who really doesn't have a wide receiver. Because compared to what Ohio State has with Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, and Cardinal Tate, Notre Dame doesn't really have a wide receiver. You can look at the Fighting Irish stats right now. They're not their leading receiver, Jaden Greathouse, 500 yards. Jeremiah Smith has 1,500 as a freshman. So that's the one place where there's not that many comparables, and we could talk about that right now. Jeremiah Smith, absolute monster. If you're talking about skill positions, Ohio State is the better skill position group. Comparable rushing attacks, comparable offensive lines, but wide receivers and tight ends, Ohio State has freaks. And it's Jeremiah Smith, the 19-year-old freshman. He did not play well against Texas because Texas, who was right up there with Notre Dame and Ohio State in terms of all defensive metrics, one of the best passing defenses in the country, I think leads the nation in interceptions. And Jeremiah Smith only had one catch because Texas was shading him a lot of the time. But against Oregon, he had, 10 receptions, 181 yards, and a touchdown and 2 touchdowns, including the touchdown to open up the game. Smith, 1,200 yards on the year, 14 touchdowns. I think it's the most ever a freshman has had in the Big Ten. If you want to keep looking at his game log right now, look at these games. Look at how many freak games he had. 7 for 187, 2 touchdowns against Oregon, the number 1 team in the country in the Rose Bowl on the biggest occasion. Against Tennessee the week before, 2 touchdowns, 6 receptions, 103. Has went over 100 yards. Let's see how many times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Touchdown count super high. Has opened up his college career with touchdowns in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 games. He's a stud. And he's the biggest difference maker on this Ohio State team because, look, Notre Dame, yeah, their weakness is their rushing defense, but if they are going to get the ball to Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson and get them going, Jeremiah Smith has to get in the game. And Notre Dame has a really good defense. You look at all their defensive metrics and the guys that are going to be matched up against Jeremiah Smith. You have Leonard Moore. Jaden Osbury's a linebacker, but he'll go into coverage. Jalen Sneed. Xavier Watts is a first-round safety. He'll be on him sometimes. Watts is back in the zone a lot, but he'll be shading him. And Notre Dame has a lot of these guys. You look at their defense. Who else did I mention, right? They have a really good linebacking core in Jack Kaiser, Drake Bowen, Jaden Osbury. Their secondary might be better. They play a lot of man-to-man. I forgot who it was in the college football playoff media day said, we're going to stick to who we are. We play a lot of man-to-man. The Fighting Irish will play a lot of man-to-man tonight against Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, and Carnell Tate. And something that has become very common on my college football playoff previews. My guy against your guy. And we're going to see that. Leonard Moore, Jalen Sneed, Xavier Watts, Aiden Schuler, Rod Hurd, even shout out Northwestern. Can you stop this Buckeyes passing attack? Because this Buckeyes passing attack is feasted against Texas, against Oregon, against Tennessee. They have had a lot of good games. And both of these teams on their way to the college football playoff had a slip up, right? And I don't know why I went there. If you're looking at Ohio State's schedule, or I could even go full screen for this. Both these teams had a slip up in the college football season. Notre Dame's to NIU, Ohio State's to Michigan. Ohio State lost 2 games by a total of 4 points. They lost to Oregon by 1. Probably would have won if Will Howard didn't slide as time expired. Then they lost to Michigan by 3 in their biggest game of the season in terms of all the rivalry and stuff. Notre Dame loses to Northern Illinois on a game-winning field goal, one of their worst losses ever. People call for Marcus Freeman's job, and what did both these teams do? Notre Dame kicked the crap out of everyone in the regular season. Ohio State kicked the crap out of everyone in the playoffs. And both these teams force turnovers when they need to and rely on their defenses. So once again, before I give this preview or prediction, just look at all the comparables, right? Transfer quarterback Riley Leonard, transfer quarterback Will Howard. 1-2 punch in Love and Price, 1-2 punch in Judkins and Henderson. Wide receivers, not the comparable. We've been over that. Jeremiah Smith's a man of his own. Defense, first in points per game, second points per game. First in yards per game, top 10 in yards per game. First in passing yards allowed. Second in passing yards allowed. These two teams are so good, and so are a lot of other college football teams. But there was a legitimate argument to be made from the start that these were the best 2 teams in college football. Again, much more the Buckeyes, who are expected to be here. The Fighting Irish, probably not as much. And now it comes down to one game, right? And it's going to be my guy against your guy. Ryan Day, Marcus Freeman, head coaches who entered the year both a little bit on the hot seat. I think Notre Dame got a little ahead, the Notre Dame fan base got a little ahead of themselves when it came to that. But at the same time, both Day and Freeman have led their teams to this national championship and each have a chance to win. And so with that, let's get into the prediction. The winner of the college football playoff will be the Ohio State Buckeyes. I said this on my podcast, Talk Ball Tweakers, with my 2 friends a few days ago. Ohio State has been the best team in the country from day 1 to day 365. From bringing in those 3 transfers in Judkins, Howard, and Downs to bringing back all those guys in Henderson, Egbuka, Tuimoloau, Sawyer, Williams, Burke, Simon. Do I need to go on and on and on? They have built this roster. Their roster entered the league or entered the year as the best in America. And 2 games against Oregon and Michigan, where they lost by 4 combined points, aren't going to change that. They slipped up. The defense wasn't bad or wasn't good in one of them. The offense wasn't good in one of them. And this is coming from a guy that picked Oregon, by the way. I picked Oregon to beat Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, and I was proved wrong. And I said on that podcast that those were the 2 best teams in the country. Ohio State is a ridiculous football team. Wherever you look, they have a first-round prospect, except Will Howard. And Will Howard is a transfer quarterback in his 6-year college football who was built for these moments. And he faced some adversity, and now they're here. Notre Dame is a really good football team. Marcus Freeman is a really good head coach. He's a top 5 head coach in college football. I just think this is going to be too much for them. I think this Ohio State defense is going to just feast on Notre Dame's offense, on their rushing offense. I don't know how much Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price are going to get it going. Like I say every game for Notre Dame, get Riley Leonard established on the ground because that just adds another fold for Ohio State and any defense to deal with. The Buckeyes are just too good. And I think Jeremiah Smith makes a difference. I think Ryan Day and Chip Kelly really tried to get him in the game after he only had one reception against Texas. And I think those are the best players in the game. I think both Henderson and Judkins are able to get going against this Notre Dame rushing attack that's probably the weakness on their defense. Don't be surprised if Will Howard doesn't have the best game, but I do think Jeremiah Smith gets involved. But at the end of the day, I think Ohio State gets the stops necessary and the turnovers necessary to win this game. Notre Dame doesn't turn over the ball a lot, but I think Ohio State is going to get the stops and they're going to control the time of possession. And I think this game goes Buckeyes 28, Notre Dame 17. Your 2025 national champions are the Ohio State Buckeyes in a year where Ryan Day had to win it, and this team had to win it or they were never going to. And so your winner, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to Mazarski Memos. If you're not subscribed already, please like and follow. I try to get as much sports content out as possible. Let's enjoy the game tonight, everyone.